I never thought I'd hear a 15-year-old scream across the neighborhood pool, "Hey, get out." My mom says this area is for real residents only. Especially not while I was the one who owned the house, paid the HOA fees, and just to add a delicious twist was the sheriff assigned to this very district. But that's exactly how the chaos started. It was a blisteringly hot Saturday, the kind of day where the sun turns everything into a frying pan. I had decided to enjoy a rare, quiet afternoon by my own pool. No badge, no paperwork, no calls, just me, an iced drink, and water cool enough to erase a week of stress. I'd barely dipped my feet in when a loud splash echoed beside me. In strutted Kyle Hoa, Karen's notoriously spoiled son, with a cheap gold chain hanging from his neck, loud swim trunks, and entitlement practically radiating like its own weather system. 3 of his friends followed behind him, shoving each other into the water, blasting music, and shouting profanity loud enough to echo across the neighborhood. I didn't say anything at first. Kids will be kids. But then Kyle climbed out, puffed his chest, pointed straight at me, and barked, "You! Pack up and leave. My mom runs the HOA, and she says people like you shouldn't be here without permission." People like me? Interesting choice of words. Still, I kept calm. "This is my property," I said evenly. "You're in my pool." He rolled his eyes so hard I thought they'd fall out. "No, it's not. My mom says this pool is practically ours because you're never here. So if you don't leave in the next 10 seconds, I'm calling the HOA. Don't test me, dude. I know people." His friends snickered, egging him on. I took a long, slow sip of my drink. "You know people," I repeated. "Yeah. Important people." He tapped his phone. "People who can have you removed." Oh, this was getting good. I leaned back, letting the sun hit my face. "Well," I said calmly, "you're welcome to call whoever you like." Kyle smirked triumphantly and started dialing. "Mom. There's some random old dude at the pool again." "Yeah, the one you said shouldn't be here. Come make him leave." His voice echoed across the water as he hung up. Then he pointed at me again, chin lifted. "Enjoy your last few minutes here." Inside, I almost laughed. If only he knew who he was talking to. But lessons like this, well, they're always more powerful when taught at the perfect moment. Karen arrived exactly as predicted, storming through the side gate like she was entering a courtroom where the verdict was already decided. Her oversized sunglasses hid her eyes, but not the fury in her expression. She marched forward with the stiff, confident posture of someone who had never once been told no in her life. Her sandals slapped aggressively against the stone tiles as she approached the pool. Kyle pointed dramatically, as if unveiling a criminal mastermind. "There. That's him, Mom. He's trespassing again." "Again?" I raised an eyebrow. Karen didn't even glance at her son. She was too busy glaring at me with the intensity of someone who believed HOA rules outranked the Constitution. "Excuse me," she snapped, "but this pool is for registered residents and approved guests only. You can't just walk in here whenever you feel like it." "I didn't walk in," I said calmly. "I live here." She let out a mocking laugh. "Please. I know every homeowner in this development. And you are absolutely not one of them." She jabbed a manicured finger toward me. "You need to leave before I call security." I took another slow sip of my drink. "You're welcome to call whoever you want." Karen straightened, as though she were about to deliver a speech. "This neighborhood has rules. Standards. And people like you, people who lurk around here without clearance, are exactly why we need stronger HOA enforcement." She turned toward her son. "Kyle, sweetie, go inside and get the violation forms." "Violation forms? For my own property?" I watched Kyle jog toward my back door like he owned it. That was when I finally stood up. "Karen," I said, my voice level, "Your son is about to walk into my house." She froze. Her nose wrinkled, offended by the audacity. "Your house? Don't be ridiculous. This property belongs to a law enforcement officer. A sheriff. A respected public servant. Someone who actually deserves to live here." I let the moment hang like a pulled pin. Then I said, "You're absolutely right." Her expression twisted. "What's that supposed to mean?" I reached over to my folded shirt on the lounge chair, lifted it, and revealed the polished badge beneath. Karen's jaw dropped so fast it almost made a sound. Kyle, halfway to my door, stopped dead when he saw it. "This house," I said, sliding the badge onto my belt, "belongs to me." Karen's sunglasses slipped down her nose. "Now," I continued, "should we discuss trespassing, or harassment, or both?" Her face drained of color. And suddenly, the pool area felt very, very quiet. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Her son stood frozen mid-step, clutching the HOA violation forms as if they were a sacred artifact. The entire pool deck fell silent, not even the water dared to ripple. Entitlement was suddenly replaced with pure, unmistakable panic. "Why, you're the sheriff," Karen finally stammered, pushing her sunglasses onto her head, revealing wide, frantic eyes. I nodded. "For the past 9 years. Kyle swallowed hard. "Mom, you didn't tell me he was that guy." I didn't know," she hissed. "He never attends HOA meetings." "How was I supposed to know?" "You banned me from them," I reminded her calmly. "Twice." Karen blinked rapidly. "Well, that was a misunderstanding." "No," I said, "you stood up in front of 30 people and declared I had no respect for community values. You even tried to fine me for my mailbox." Kyle gasped dramatically. "Mom. The mailbox guy? You tried to evict the sheriff because of a mailbox." Karen whirled on him. It was rusting. It was stainless steel. She turned back to me, voice trembling. "Let's just, calm down. No need for legal action. Everyone makes mistakes." I raised an eyebrow. "Mistakes like trespassing on my property? Allowing your son and his friends to invade my pool whenever they want? Or filing fake complaints to pressure me into attending HOA meetings you aren't legally allowed to require?" Kyle winced. "Mom, is that true?" She glared at him. "Kyle, sweetie, go home." "I'd rather not," he muttered, inching away from the blast radius. Karen forced a smile, the kind that looked stapled onto her face. "Look, Sheriff. Let's be adults. You clearly don't spend much time outside, so naturally we assumed the pool wasn't being used. And I didn't mean any disrespect when I said you looked suspicious earlier. You told your son people like me shouldn't be near the pool," I corrected. Karen froze again. "Well, that was taken out of context." I folded my arms. "What context would make it acceptable?" Her lips flattened. "I'm trying to apologize." "No," I said. "You're trying to avoid consequences." The wind picked up slightly, and Karen's hair fluttered in a way that made her look even more uncomfortable. "This ends today," I continued. "Your son will no longer enter my property. You will stop filing false HOA complaints. And you'll stop acting like you run this neighborhood." Kyle quietly backed toward the gate. Karen stared at the ground, defeated. "Fine," she muttered. "We'll leave." But she didn't move. It was clear she had something else to say, something she wasn't sure she had the courage to speak aloud. Karen remained frozen in place, her fists clenching and unclenching as she fought an internal battle between pride and fear. Kyle had already retreated halfway through the gate, hovering like he wasn't sure whether to run home or pretend he'd never been born. Her friends stared at her from the sidewalk, whispering nervously. It was obvious she wasn't done. She finally lifted her chin. I just want to say, this isn't fair. I almost laughed. Which part? All of it, she snapped. You never participate in community events, you don't respond to HOA messages, you don't engage with your neighbors, and yet everyone respects you just because you're the sheriff. I don't need to engage with you to enjoy my own property, I replied. And respect isn't something people hand out, it's earned. Her eyes sharpened. I earned respect in this community. By threatening people with fines over paint colors? I asked. Or by yelling at teenagers for walking too loudly? She bristled. I maintain standards. Karen, I said gently, you maintain fear. That line hit her harder than anything else I'd said all afternoon. She blinked rapidly, trying to hold her expression together. I've given years to this neighborhood, she whispered. I just want things to be perfect. And perfection, I replied, doesn't come from controlling people. Kyle finally reappeared behind her, voice small. Mom, maybe we should go home. For once, she didn't argue. She stood silently for a long moment, staring at the shimmering water of my pool. I could see her wrestling with embarrassment, anger, guilt, emotions she clearly wasn't used to navigating. I didn't mean to cause problems, she muttered. You did, though, I said. More than once. I know, she said quietly. But I don't hate you. I just didn't know how else to keep the neighborhood together. Try being kind, I suggested. It works better. She nodded stiffly. It wasn't much, but for someone like her, it was practically a transformation. Karen turned to her son. Kyle. Apologize. He groaned. Do I have to? Yes. He stared at the ground. Sorry for, making you leave your own pool. And yelling. And the forms. And whatever else. It wasn't heartfelt, but it was a start. I nodded. Apology accepted. Karen took his hand and guided him toward the gate. Before leaving, she paused. Sheriff, if you ever need anything. I held up a hand. Just respect the property lines. She swallowed and nodded. The gate clicked shut behind them. For the first time all day, the pool felt peaceful again. I sank into the water, letting the quiet settle around me. Finally no HOA, no complaints, no drama. Just calm. The moment my badge glinted under the sunlight, the spoiled brat's entire expression collapsed. His jaw literally dropped, and he froze like someone had just poured a bucket of ice water over him. Karen, however, wasn't done. Oh no. She lunged forward, screeching louder than a malfunctioning smoke alarm. That badge is fake, she shrieked, pointing her perfectly manicured talon at me. He's impersonating law enforcement. Call security. Call the HOA. Call somebody. I stayed calm. Completely calm. Almost too calm, which only made them panic more. Ma'am, I said slowly, I've been the county sheriff for 14 years. You are welcome to verify my identity. The brat, suddenly unsure of everything in the universe, fumbled with his phone, stammering, he's bluffing. He has to be. But he wouldn't stop Googling my name. Meanwhile, the crowd around the pool grew. Neighbors peered over fences. Phones came out. Cameras turned on. And as soon as one person whispered, "Oh my God, he really is the sheriff," the entire mood shifted like a snapped rope bridge. Karen's face went from red to purple. My HOA rights, she began. Don't apply here, I cut in. This is my property. My pool. And you just trespassed, harassed a resident, attempted to remove a lawful homeowner, and escalated a disturbance. The brat took a step back. His voice cracked. I didn't know. If someone told me, I wouldn't have said anything. You didn't ask, I replied. You just barked orders. The entire pool deck fell silent. I stepped closer, not threatening, just authoritative. Let me make something very clear. Sheriff or not, you would still be in the wrong. You don't get to boss strangers around just because your mother raised you to believe you own every property line on earth. A few people snickered. Karen recoiled like I'd slapped her with a truth she never expected to hear. This is harassment, she barked. You can't talk to my son like that. I'm actually being extremely polite, I answered. But if you'd like to file a complaint, you're welcome to step into my office tomorrow morning. I'll be the one behind the desk. Her mouth fell open again. This time, nothing came out. The brat put a hand on her shoulder. Mom, he whispered, panicked, let's just go. Please. But Karen wasn't done. She spun around toward the neighbors. This isn't over. I will talk to the HOA board about this abuse of power. Except the neighbor standing closest to her smiled sweetly. Go ahead, Karen. The sheriff is on the board. Silence. A slow-motion meltdown froze across Karen's face. Now, I said, crossing my arms, please leave my property. Karen grabbed her son by the wrist and stomped away like she was marching into a courtroom she thought she'd already won. The brat followed, mumbling apologies as they hurried off the deck. But something told me they weren't done causing trouble. Not by a long shot. Chaos erupted the moment the HOA began gathering on the sidewalk. Karen stood front and center, clutching a clipboard like it was a royal decree. Her spoiled son hovered behind her, arms crossed, glaring at me as though I were the one who'd trespassed on his property. Neighbors whispered excitedly, phones raised, recording everything. The scene looked less like a meeting and more like a circus that had just lost its ringmaster. Karen cleared her throat dramatically. This community, she began, projecting her voice like a failed theater actress, is under threat. My son was verbally assaulted at the pool by this man. She pointed at me like she expected lightning to strike where her finger landed. I kept silent, letting her performance run its course. My son deserves respect, she continued. He simply enforced HOA rules, which clearly state that guests cannot occupy the pool without permission. A neighbor raised a hand. But he lives there, doesn't he? Karen ignored her completely. Then she snapped her fingers at her son. Tell them. The boy stepped forward, puffing out his chest. He refused to leave the pool when I told him to. He acted like he owned the place. A small ripple of awkward laughter passed through the crowd. Someone murmured, well, he does own the place. Karen whipped toward them. Who said that? I finally spoke. Calm. Controlled. Karen, are you sure you want to keep going? You're making this worse than it needs to be. She scoffed. Please. You're just embarrassed because the HOA is holding you accountable. I smiled slightly. No, Karen. I'm giving you the chance to stop before you dig yourself deeper. She folded her arms triumphantly. You have no authority here. That was the moment I took out my badge. A collective gasp washed over the crowd. Phones zoomed in. Karen's face drained of color like someone hit a switch. Her son stumbled backward, suddenly confused, suddenly very, very small. Karen, I said, holding the badge where everyone could clearly see it, I am the sheriff in this county. I've been more than patient, but you and your son have repeatedly trespassed, harassed me on my own property, and attempted to enforce non-existent HOA authority. That ends today. Karen opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her son grabbed her arm, whispering urgently. She slapped his hand away, still trying to salvage her collapsing ego. You're lying, she blurted, voice cracking. This is fake. You can't just. I clipped the badge back onto my belt. Karen. One more word, and I'll be forced to handle this formally. Silence. Finally. The HOA crowd stared, waiting to see what happened next. The tension was electric. Karen's face looked like it had drained of all color, her sunglasses slipping slightly down her nose. Her son hovered beside her, unsure whether to protest or vanish into thin air. The neighborhood had gone completely silent, phones raised like spectators at an unfolding duel. Every eye was on me, the sheriff, and the woman who had made a career out of entitlement. I stepped closer to the pool, keeping my movements calm and deliberate. "Karen," I said, voice steady, "you have repeatedly overstepped boundaries, harassed me on my property, and attempted to use your son to enforce non-existent rules. That behavior stops today." She sputtered, searching for a retort, but none came. The words were stuck in her throat, tangled in her own disbelief. Kyle's jaw dropped so far it looked like it might hit the pool deck. His previous bravado evaporated instantly. I let the moment settle, giving her space to process. Her expression shifted from anger to panic, then to a faint glimmer of realization. I didn't realize," she started, her voice wavering. "You did," I interrupted gently. "You've done this before, and you'll do it again if no one calls it out. That's why I'm being very clear right now. Your actions have consequences, whether or not you like it." Her son looked down, shuffling his feet, muttering, "Mom, maybe we should just leave." She glared at him, then back at me. This is unfair. You're abusing your power. You're just a sheriff, not a god." I let a small smile escape. "No, I'm just someone who enforces the law, protects property rights, and ensures that entitled people no matter their age cannot harass others without repercussions." The surrounding neighbors started murmuring in agreement, shaking their heads at Karen's audacity. Her presence, once commanding and imposing, now seemed almost cartoonishly desperate. She tugged on her son's sleeve, trying to regain some semblance of authority, but it was gone. Finally, she took a deep breath. "Fine," she said, almost whispering. "We'll leave. But, this isn't the end." I shook my head calmly. "It is the end for today. You can go home, and I suggest reflecting on what just happened." She waved her hand dismissively, dragging Kyle away like a defeated general retreating from battle. The neighbors began to relax, some chuckling quietly, others shaking their heads in disbelief at the spectacle. I watched them disappear down the street, feeling the poolside calm return. The water glimmered in the sunlight, peaceful once more. I finally sank into the pool, letting the cool water wash away the tension of the afternoon. For the first time in days, the pool was truly mine. The pool was finally quiet, but my mind kept replaying the chaos that had unfolded. Karen and her son had retreated, yet I knew their egos weren't fully defeated. Entitlement like that doesn't vanish overnight. Still, for the first time in weeks, the water reflected nothing but sunlight and serenity. I leaned back on the lounge chair, sipping my iced tea, and let myself breathe. The neighbors had returned to their routines, casting occasional curious glances at the pool. Some smiled, a few waved. It seemed word had spread quickly about the sheriff reclaiming his own space. That subtle acknowledgement felt almost like applause. As I skimmed through my phone, a notification popped up, a local HOA group chat buzzing with messages. Karen's name glared at me in bold letters. "Can you believe him? The audacity." Another read, "He's abusing his power. Not fair." I smiled. Predictable. Entitlement rarely allows self-reflection. Still, I couldn't let my guard down. I decided to reinforce the pool boundaries literally. Later that evening, I set up a modest fence along the property line with clear signage, "Private property, pool access by owner only." Nothing flashy, nothing confrontational, just firm and undeniable. Anyone crossing it would know exactly who held authority here. While working, I reflected on Kyle's expression during the confrontation. That mixture of awe, fear, and confusion was priceless. It wasn't revenge, it was perspective. Entitled kids and their parents rarely realize consequences until someone calmly enforces the rules. In this case, that someone was me. By nightfall, I had finished reinforcing the boundaries. The pool lights came on, casting gentle illumination across the water. The quiet hum of the neighborhood replaced earlier chaos. For the first time, it felt like the pool had returned to its rightful state, peaceful, private, and free from interruptions. I stepped into the water, letting it wash away the tension. Every ripple reminded me why boundaries mattered, why enforcement mattered, and why patience combined with authority was far more effective than yelling or retaliation. This wasn't about humiliating Karen or her son, it was about reclaiming my property, dignity, and sense of calm. As the stars began to reflect on the surface of the water, I realized something important: power isn't about fear, it's about certainty. Karen had tried to intimidate me, her son had tried to assert control, and yet I remained steady. That steadiness was worth far more than any shouting match. The pool shimmered under the night sky, calm and undisturbed. And for the first time since the confrontation began, I truly felt victorious.